Hey guys, we got one more movie before we go into Resident Evil, and that's going to be Big Fish. Movie by Tim Burton about a father and son trying to reconnect as it turns out the father has been telling the son these big fish tales. You know about a big fish tale is, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, those over exaggerated, like, oh, I threw in my line. On the day, basically, his was the day my son was born, I was out too busy catching this fish.
Mm-hmm.
Like a huge fish that I just had to let go.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, his son first liked it, but soon got tired of it, bored with it, and now he's trying to reconcile, find out who is my father.
Mm-hmm.
And what we get here is, I assure you, it's going to be a tearjerker, but it's also going to be one that's going to, it's just very touching. Again, it's going to have that typical Tim Burton wackiness, but still be very well done.
All right.
All right, so we'll see you guys on the other end.
They say when you meet the love of your life, time stops. And that's true. Your mother was never supposed to marry me. She was engaged to somebody else.
Forget it, kid. Don't waste your time. She's out of your league.
You don't even know me.
Sure I do. You were hot stuff back in Hickville.
Edward Blue!
But here in the real world, you got squat.
Now, I may not have much, but I have more determination than any man you're ever likely to meet.
Sandra Templeton, I love you and I will marry you!
I was drying out.
Dad, I have no idea who you are.
What do you want, Will? Who do you want me to be?
Just yourself. Just show me who you are for once.
Discover an adventure.
Crying.
I cried too.
This, what can I say about the movie? It's one of my favorites. 10 out of 10, just like Terminal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's basically, like I said before, it's about a father who's telling these big stories and his son just wants to know the truth. And what did he find out? Most of it was true.
Just a little bit embellished to make everyone else feel special.
But why did he think it was all fake? Because the one story that was a fabrication was his own. It was on his birth.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as he was concerned, my father doesn't tell me the truth like that. Everything sounds so ridiculous, it must be made up. Not realizing that he made up the story because that was one of the most special days of his life. And I mean, the father.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt so awful he couldn't be there. Even though he wouldn't have been in the delivery room anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That he wanted to make it special, even if it was all made up.
Mm-hmm.
But then he also realized there was a moral at the end of that story compared to all the others.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what that moral was?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to catch an uncatchable woman, you got to give her a wedding ring. And he's basically saying that from the beginning. If you want to get a girl, propose to her. Mm-hmm. But so much about it, you start to pick apart what was real and what wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And now, granted, there's some cases where there is some other embellishments that are really out there. But as one girl named Jenny puts it, there are two women in his life. His wife, Will's mother, and everyone else. And unfortunately, this young girl named Jenny, in her eyes, she never mattered. Except as being the girl who we met once and when he came to a town too early, and as the witch. Even though the witch technically in the stories happens way sooner in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Which, that's probably one other case where you say there probably was a fabrication.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say the big fish itself was the only fabrication. I'm pretty sure the whole, but it does set up something that you don't know until the end, that he's setting up something special for his son, which was, and I also like this mindset. He's basically, there's a witch that had a glass eye, you see it, and you would know how you die.
Mm-hmm.
Now anyone else, you're like, you don't want that. But not, but not the father. He realizes, if I know, I'll know I'll survive everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And we never know what it was. Not even Will, the son. Not even he knows. But throughout all this, we start to see a bit of a chronology, a little bit of a rough start, but we do see a general chronology leading up to a lot of his life. Mm-hmm. And when you hear this, you can see why the son thinks it's all bullshit. It seems like no way any of this happened. There's no way he met Siamese twins. There's no way he met a giant that was like 15, 20 feet tall. There's no way he went to a circus and then for 3 years and then to find out that the ringmaster was a werewolf. Mm-hmm. You hear all this stuff, you'd be like, there's no way. Mm-hmm. But once you find out at the very end, most of it was real, just embellished. Like, there were twins. They weren't conjoined. Now, here's what I have to wonder. Do you think he said they were conjoined, or do you think he said they were at the hip? You know what I mean? Because we saw them, they were that close all the time.
Might have, that actually is pretty brilliant. He just interpreted that a little bit too literally.
I mean, given what the son, when he's actually told a true story, he still has the embellishments. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, because basically, throughout all this, he was convinced, and this is the sad part, he was convinced his father was bored with him and his mom, and that he was off having an affair. To the point where, when he finally meets up with the girl Jenny, he asks bluntly, were you having an affair? And she's like, wow, you just came right out and said it. I was going to dance around it for like half an hour. No, but they did it. Not for her lack of trying, though. That was the big part. You're like, yeah. Because why else would you say I was going to dance around it? You're like, but wait, if it didn't happen, oh, you wanted it to happen, but it never did. And that's the other thing I love. You have two sets of actors playing the father and the mother at different points in their lives. They both have great chemistry. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like there's a disconnect between the two pairs of actors.
Definitely not. And if you ever see photos of Albert Finney, the guy who played the father, when he was younger, he's almost a dead ringer for Ewan McGregor. And he actually played the mom. I just forgot her name, but when you saw her younger, the actor that played her younger, it's almost a dead ringer. Mm-hmm. It's like, now you look at how they are in the present day, you can't tell. You're like, oh, that's just, but no, if you look at how they used to be, then you're like, son of a bitch. But there's just so much amazingness in this movie, isn't there? Now, I mean, and it's right up there with Terminal, you know, as far as, especially the romance, right? Mm-hmm. Now, unlike Terminal, of course, where that was about, you know, finding America, this one was more about trying to just tell your life in a clever way that makes everyone look special. But unfortunately, as the father also realized near the end, he embellished maybe a little too much and this went right over the son's head. Mm-hmm. And I think his father should have caught that, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. Do you think so? Because he even says, I've told you everything I am. If you can't see it, that's on you, not me. Of course, I feel like dude, that's a little unfair, a little harsh, don't you think? Mm-hmm. I mean, I get why the dad feels that way, but I mean, where do you stand? Do you think so, or do you think it was mostly on the son? You can be honest. I mean,
honestly, I feel like there's like kind of a
give or take.
Give or take, because there's another thing to sort of like have a feeling. There's another thing to sort of let that feeling just kind of stay there, and it's like sometimes you don't. The first thing is identifying that there's even a problem in the first place. Exactly.
I mean, then you also have the point, you could so tell that the point where things started to change for Will is when they're going through all paperwork and his mother finds the letter that said where in the army he believed he died. And he immediately said, that really happened? Not everything your father says is a fabrication. And the fact you use that specific word, fabrication, I like that, you know what I mean? Because you notice, she didn't say not everything he says is a tall tale or not everything he says is a lie. She said fabrication. There's a difference.
Yeah.
Now, you said before we start, you had stuff to say. Is there anything else?
Yeah, this movie kind of just, it reads like an extended parable, and it's...
Yeah.
It's in a really good way. Like, I think you mentioned before about, like, the whole thing about the ringmaster being a werewolf. You said that might be a metaphor for, like, them being an alcoholic or potentially, like, having anger issues or whatever.
I mean, how else would that have played out, right? Especially when you take into account how beforehand, now, I could so believe, maybe not to the extent of saying, I'll work for nothing as long as you give me a little bit of information. It was probably more of a case of, oh, I'll work for very little, but you should tell me. And he held him along for so long. But then once and then you can still tell it's like, this is a guy who probably was an alcoholic and just felt like, I'm going to take it out on this guy. But once the father helped him out through his issues, he finds like, what a piece of shit I was. You know what, kid? I'm going to tell you. Now, here's the other thing. Now, do you think there was a guy who was the mother was engaged to? Or do you think that could have been a personification of a bunch of people that the father had to go through? It's hard to tell. That's probably one of the other things. It's hard to tell who... You could tell most of them were real. But in that particular case, I question it. You know what I mean? Because
it could have just been, oh, she was dating this guy and everyone thought that they would get engaged or something.
Or something like that.
Obviously, like, he's like...
And he might as well have died. And he might have well have died. But I think anyone connected to the witch story with the eye could have been made up. That we know that was a fabrication. It was. It could go either way. So, yeah. Great movie. It's just one of those... You know what I mean, right? I'm sorry, I'm just at a loss for words. I'm already starting to well up again.
Oh, no, I totally get it. Sometimes you just feel emotions and you don't know what they are, but they sure are a lot.
Yep. Oh, but I will say this. The whole, how do I go? That was the brilliant part.
That was the thing that just tied everything else together.
He held it off for so long because he wanted his son to tell him.
Yes.
Now, it almost didn't happen. He had a stroke and was in a coma. And he just happened to wake up in his last moments, but... You could so tell once the son told him it, he got it. Especially right beforehand when he finally heard the story about his birth. Then I kind of felt a little like, I prefer the real story. I'm like, dude.
Come on.
By this point, you're like, dude, really? Especially when even the doctor said, personally, I prefer the fish story. Because that's what made a point. But I think once he had to tell the tale, then it finally clicked to him. But again, once he was at the funeral is when he finally, and in the audience too, realized it was probably, what would you say, 70% true?
Yeah, like anywhere from like 70 to 80% true.
I gotta say, yeah, all of them, I felt the most sorry for Jenny. Especially when she still, by the end, thinks, I didn't matter. But she kind of did. Because there was a point where he would find this town called Spectre. And it's like this perfect town. We'd later see it, how it probably really looked, and it wasn't that perfect, but pristine. But basically, he would say, I was there too early. Then later on, it was made clear he was there too late. And then it bothered me that, like, okay, Jenny's telling Will the real story. Why would she phrase it the exact same way his father did? Then you realize, he's talking about Jenny. He was there too early because she was too young. And then too late because he was married. And let's talk about the other bit. It was adorable. When they're talking like, I'm 8, you're 18. That's just $10 and 10 years apart. When you're 8, and when I'm 18, you'll be 28. And it goes through like, that's not that much difference. Then when he meets her as an adult, he's like, did you get married? Yeah, I was 18, he was 28. Turns out that's a big difference.
Yeah, that was...
You were like, ooh.
Yeah, that's just, oof.
Yeah, but you could tell that she had that mindset. But like I said, it's just, that point is when things started to click, if you ask me. When you talk to Jenny. When, Will talked to Jenny. I think that's when a lot of stuff started to come together, but not too obviously still. You know what I mean? Because we never knew what the father said about Jenny, if ever. I don't think he did. I don't think he ever brought up how he fixed Spectre.
Yeah.
But we know he did. Because that's the other thing, is we don't know where the cutoff is for the stories. From the father, I mean. You only get up to a certain point, and then, which was after the fish story, and then Jenny tells the truth, and then his father gets the stroke. So there's a lot of stories we don't know about, but we really didn't need to know about. But at the same time, though, it's curious, you know what I mean? We don't know how much Jenny debunked or proven, you know what I mean? Because clear Will felt like you're telling me the real story. So clearly he's probably brought up some parts of it, but we don't know. But overall, though, glad I showed you it.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. So hopefully we'll get to the Resident Evil marathon. Tomorrow will be for us. So, well, no, tomorrow for us and tomorrow for you guys, hopefully. So, and if not, if things fall through, oh well. But till then, we'll catch you guys later.